Have you ever just stopped and wondered how something massive gets built, like a skyscraper? Or how a brand new app goes from just an idea to something you're using on your phone? Well, today, we're going to break down the world of professional project management and figure out how these incredibly complex ideas actually come to life. I mean, really stop and think about that for a second. The unbelievable amount of coordination, the money, the people, all the things that could go wrong at any moment. How in the world do these huge undertakings ever actually get finished? Well, here's the secret. It's not a lucky accident, and it's definitely not magic. Project management is a real, structured, global profession. And like any serious profession, it has a code, a set of principles that guides every single decision. Okay, so let's dive in. Before we even get to the timelines and the software, we have to start with the foundation. Think of it like this. Before you ever look at a map for a journey, you need a compass, right? Something that points you to true north. For a project manager, that compass is ethics. And what's so cool about this is that these four core values, responsibility, respect, fairness, and honesty, they weren't just made up by some committee in a stuffy boardroom. Nope, the entire global community of project managers came together and said, these are the things that matter. This is our bedrock. And this is where it gets really serious. The profession's code is split into two parts. On one side, you have aspirational standards. That's kind of like the be your best self guide. But then, you have mandatory standards. These are the hard lines, the absolute rules. You cross them and there are real consequences. We're talking actual disciplinary procedures. Okay, so we've got our compass. We know our true north. Now we arrive at a huge fork in the road. Because in the modern world of project management, there are basically two main philosophies, two very different paths you can take to get a project done. Let's check them out. So path number one is what we call the predictive approach. You'll also hear it called waterfall. And honestly, that name is perfect. Think about it. Water only flows one way, down. And that's exactly how these projects work. You finish one phase completely before moving to the next. Everything, and I mean everything, gets planned out right at the start. And then you have the other path, agile. And this is a totally different way of thinking. Forget that one giant upfront plan. With agile, you work in these short little bursts, these cycles. The whole game is about getting something useful to the customer as fast as possible, and then you listen. You take their feedback, and you adjust as you go. So, if you boil it all down, this is the fundamental difference, right? For the predictive world, value comes from creating and sticking to that beautiful, detailed plan. For the agile world, value comes from being able to pivot and respond when things inevitably change. Two paths, two completely different ideas of what's important. All right, let's walk down that first path for a bit. The predictive blueprint. The skyscraper analogy is perfect here. You wouldn't just start digging a foundation and, figure out where the windows go later, right? No way. You have a master blueprint. Every single detail is locked in before a single shovel hits the dirt. That is the predictive mindset. And this is what it looks like in practice. It follows these 5 classic linear steps. You kick things off in initiating, then you go deep into planning. Once that plan is solid, you move to executing, the actual work. But all the while, you're monitoring and controlling everything to make sure you're not straying from the plan. And at the very end, you formally close it all out. See? Super logical, step by step. So how do you manage all that detail in the planning phase? Well, the star of the show is this thing called the work breakdown structure, or WBS. It's a really smart idea. You take the huge final goal, your skyscraper, and you just start breaking it down. The building becomes floors, floors become rooms, rooms become walls. You get it. You keep going until you have these small, manageable tasks. It's how you make sure literally nothing gets missed. Ultimately, with this approach, the name of the game is precision and control. Your success is measured against something called the baseline. Think of it as your original plan, set in stone. Any changes have to be formally approved, and then they become part of a new baseline. Did you hit your deadlines? Did you stay on budget? It all comes back to that baseline. Okay, let's head back to that crossroads and take the other path, the agile expedition. This time, forget the detailed blueprint. Picture yourself as an explorer. You have a destination in mind, a mountain you want to climb, but you don't have a perfect map. You figure out the best trail as you go, adapting to the terrain you find. And this quote right here from the actual Agile Manifesto just says it all. Our highest priority is to satisfy the customer. It's not about satisfying the plan. It's about the customer. And the way you do that is by giving them something that works and giving it to them early and often. No more waiting years for one big reveal at the end. So if you don't have a giant work breakdown structure, how do you track the work? Well, Agile uses something called user stories, and they're awesome. They're just these short, simple descriptions of a feature told from the perspective of the person who's actually going to use it. It forces the team to always be thinking about the why, the real human value behind every single thing they build. And there's this great little acronym to remember what makes a good user story. INVEST. Each letter stands for something crucial. It's got to be independent, so you can tackle it on its own. Negotiable, not some rigid contract. Valuable, that one's huge. Estimable, so you can guess the effort. Small enough to get done quickly. And testable, so you actually know when it's done. It's a brilliant little framework. You know what else is totally different? Leadership. The whole idea of a top-down project manager just goes out the window. Instead, you have what's called a servant leader or coach. Their main job isn't to command and control, it's to serve the team. They're there to clear roadblocks, get the team what they need, and basically create an environment where these brilliant, self-organizing people can do their absolute best work. So, we've seen the blueprint, and we've seen the expedition, the structured plan versus the adaptive journey. So what's the big takeaway for anyone managing projects today? Well, it means you can't just be good at one or the other. You have to become a master navigator, someone who knows how to read all the maps.
Which brings us to the million-dollar question, right? The one everyone always asks. Which way is better? Should we go with the structured blueprint or the adaptive expedition? Which one actually wins?
And the answer is, it's the wrong question. It's not about which one is better in a vacuum. The real answer is, it depends. The best approach is always the one that fits the project you're working on right now. A great project manager doesn't have a favorite. They have a toolbox. Let's make this really concrete. Take something every single project has to deal with, risk. In the predictive world, you try to think of every possible thing that could go wrong up front and make a detailed plan for it. The goal is to control uncertainty. But in the Agile world, you accept you can't predict everything. So you deal with risks as they pop up in each little cycle. You actually embrace uncertainty. See? Two totally different but totally valid ways of handling the exact same problem. And that is the real secret to modern project management. True mastery isn't about being a predictive expert or an agile purist. It's about versatility. It's having both of these toolkits ready to go. It's knowing when a project needs a detailed blueprint, when it needs a compass and a general direction. And what's happening more and more, knowing how to blend them together to get the best of both worlds. Because at the end of the day, that's what every project is, right? It's a journey. You're taking an idea and you're making it real. So the question for you isn't which map is the best one. The question is, for the journey you're about to take, what kind of map are you going to draw?